Allah Ta'ala's attribute of knowing the future is difficult for us to understand because we have no point of reference to understand it. For example, it's easier for us to understand Allah Ta'ala's attribute of the forgiving because we can forgive in our small circle of authority. It's also easier for us to understand Allah Ta'ala's attribute of the all-knowing when it relates to the past because we have knowledge of the past in our small circle of experience. You don't hear too many philosophical questions arise about Allah Ta'ala's perfect knowledge of the past because in principle we have experience of it. But these philosophical questions do arise about the application of Allah Ta'ala's perfect knowledge of the future. We have no certain knowledge of the future in any circle of our experience. So it's difficult for us to understand Allah Ta'ala being all-knowing when it relates to the future. Now, one way we can understand Allah Ta'ala's attribute of all-knowing as it applies to the future is if we personally experience knowing the future in some way. Now, how can we do this? We can't transport ourselves to the future and then come back to the present. But what we can do is we can transport ourselves to the past and then come back to the present as a hypothetical scenario, as a mental exercise to try and understand this philosophical question. Now try this exercise. Watch a live basketball game. Now as you're watching the players play, you already know they have free will to make whatever decision they want to make. Now in one play you see the player fakes right, then he goes left and then he shoots the ball. Now watch a replay of that play. Except when you're watching the replay, imagine that you're watching it live. This is the hypothetical scenario. This is the mental exercise right here where we imagine that we're watching it live. By imagining that the recording is happening live, we're transporting ourselves into the past. Now you know that the player is going to fake right. Then you know he's going to go left. And you know he's going to shoot the ball. You have perfect knowledge of his future. But you also know that that player you're watching on that screen, he has free will to do whatever he wants to do as he's doing it. As you watch the player make his decisions on the screen, you can see him analyzing the situation, making split-second decisions, deciding to fake right and then to go left. You know for certain what he's going to do, but you're also watching him make those decisions with his own free will. Both of these things exist simultaneously in this experience right now. You know his decision for certain, but your knowledge has no power to influence his free will. Now imagine a human being traveled through time, and he knows your future. For him, your whole life is like a recorded game. Now, this example will help us as well because when we know that Allah Ta'ala knows the future perfectly, we sometimes wonder if we have free will because Allah Ta'ala is also the all-powerful. But now imagine just a normal person like you or me. He's not all-powerful. But since he's come from the future, he knows exactly what's going to happen in our life. It's a recorded game for him. He knows what you're going to do before you even decide to do it. He knows why you're going to choose which clothes you chose this morning, what time you wake up, whether you brush your teeth first or shower first. Whatever you're going to do, he already knows what you're going to do. He knew everything you did today before you were going to do it. To you, this day feels like you're doing it live. But for him, it feels like he's watching a recording. He's watching a replay. He's already seen this before. He has no control over your decisions, and he's not responsible for the consequences of any of your actions. His knowledge of what you're doing and his knowledge of what you're going to do has no effect on the free will that you have in that moment. So this is the same way that your knowledge of what the basketball player was going to do had no effect on his free will either. So whether what you're watching is live or it's a recording, that person on the screen who you're watching is a person, and you're watching him making decisions. So knowledge of the future doesn't take anything away from our free will. Now when we take this understanding and we apply it to this question, this philosophical question, then we see that Allah Ta'ala has chosen to observe our actions rather than control our actions in this world. He gave us free will by temporarily withdrawing His control over our actions. Although He does manifest His will from time to time through miracles, but generally He's chosen to let us do as we will and to let the laws of nature dictate how things happen, and we function freely within that. So because He is the all-knowing, He knows everything we're going to do before we do it. But His knowledge doesn't interfere with that power that we have to make our own decisions. So one way to understand Allah Ta'ala's attribute of the being all-knowing in the future is to find a way to relate to it, any way that we can find to relate to it. If you can find another hypothetical scenario that works better for you, then that one will work and make this question easy to understand. Although Allah Ta'ala knows every decision we're going to make, that knowledge does not affect our free will to make that decision in any way. So the short answer is that you have to imagine yourself being in the past and then looking to the present as if it were the future. It's a philosophical question and it has a philosophical answer. So when we observe from this perspective, then this question becomes easier to understand.